Okay, now the next word in the thing, على قدر أهل العزم تأتي العزائم. So I'm actually going to delay the analysis of what azm means, and we're going to jump to the second half. وتأتي على قدر الكرام المكارم. What does the root karama mean? Or, kaf ra mim. What does that mean? What's al-karam? Okay, so this is from التحقيق في كلمات القرآن الكريم. The author says, إن الأصل الواحدة في المادة, the unifying principle or the root meaning of this root, the root of, like I said, or maybe I should put it like this, ka ram ra mim. Okay, so the root is huwa ma yuqabilu al-hawan. It is the opposite of al-hawan. Okay. And al-hawan basically means, to lack weight or importance. I mean, to like basically, something that carries no gravity and therefore is easily made light of and disrespected. Okay. إن الأصل الواحد في المادة هو ما يقابل الهوان كما أن العزة ما يقابل الذلة. In the same way that عزة is the opposite of ذلة, which he's going to explain in a second further. Okay. والكبر ما يقابله الصغر. Right, الصغر. Okay. So in the same way that kibr or arrogance, okay, what opposes it or is opposite to it is as-sighar. Okay, and I think he's going to explain that as well in a second. So I'll later on I'll just explain it now. So al-kibr means al-kibru, it means basically pride or arrogance, seeing oneself as big. Okay, and then you have as-sighar. I guess I should do this. As-sighar means to regard oneself as small. Okay, or low in rank. Okay, so hopefully you guys, that's fairly straightforward. So he continues, وَالذِّلَّةُ هُوَ هَوَانٌ بِإِذْلَالِ مَنْ هُوَ أَعْلَى مِنْهُ. That الذِّلَّة is not just simply being made light of or disrespected, but rather it's being made light of and disrespected by someone who is higher in status. In other words, someone who's to be put down and humiliated by someone higher in status. Okay, someone who's higher than the person being made fun of, being put down, being humiliated. Okay, بخلاف الهوان. So he says that's in opposition to merely, lacking importance or weight or being made light of or disrespected, because there could be somebody who's of equal status to you or even less status than you that puts you down. Okay, and it's that he's not that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're being put down by someone who's higher in status than you. Okay, so he says فيعتبر في العزة مفهوم الاستعلاء والتفوق. Okay, بخلاف الإكرام. So remember, because الذلة is in opposition to العزة, العزة also contains this idea of الاستعلاء, one person being higher than the other in status. Okay, in the same way, ذلة has that اعتبار, has that dimension added to it. العزة also has that dimension added to it. Okay. بخلاف الإكرام, whereas إكرام does not have this idea of one person's status being higher than the other, and he's going to explain that further. So let me just clear the board so that we have space to write if need be. Okay, so just before we continue, since we've defined الذلة and we know that al-izza is the opposite of الذلة as he just mentioned, so because الذلة means al-hawan plus this idea of superiority. So izza basically means the opposite of being made light of. It means, being given weight / having gravity plus, social superiority. Okay, being given weight / gravity plus having social superiority. Okay, that's important. Now let's go to al-karama. So he says فالكرامة عزة وتفوق في نفس الشيء ولا يلاحظ فيه استعلاء بالنسبة إلى الغير الذي هو دونه. Okay, so let me just explain what he's trying to say here. So what he's saying is al-karama is basically the same thing as izza, but minus this part. Meaning being given weight / having gravity / being superior in and of itself without regard to social status. So this might confuse you because you might think, well, being superior is synonymous with social status, right? Of having social superiority. No, there's other types of superiority which are not social superiority. Okay? So for example, if one painting is like more beautiful than another, that's a type of superiority that's aesthetic. Now, it might confer also social superiority as a result of that, because obviously the more beautiful something is, the more people are going to like it or whatever. But that's a downstream effect. In and of itself, the one painting or the one work of art is superior to the other work of art, regardless of, the social downstream effects of it. You understand what I'm trying to say? One person's skill in basketball may be better than another person's skill. You understand what I'm saying? So the idea that all superiority is social superiority, that's not correct. So here it's saying that this is being given weight, it's having gravity, it's superior in and of itself, okay, without regards to social status or other considerations, without regards to the person who's then therefore beneath the first person. So it's not this idea of the social hierarchy, right? It's saying that the thing is superior in and of itself, not in a social hierarchy way where this person here is better than this person down here. Okay, that is al-izza. This is describing al-izza, whereas this is just saying more in terms of human values. Okay, human values, what people in and of themselves appreciate or kind of intuitively see the worth of and the greatness of, if that makes sense. Okay, and another thing that's good that is usually karama is translated is with this idea of nobility, or kind of honor. And here again, it's without regard to hierarchical superiority with respect to others. Okay, It is, for something to be worthy in and of itself, to be noble in and of itself, like a noble deed. Okay. So I guess let's move on to the next page. وَأَمَّا مَفَاهِيمُ الْجُودِ وَالْإِعْطَاءِ. So as for the concepts of al-jud, okay, al-jud is generosity, right? Generosity. Okay. Al-i'ta, which means to giving, or bestowing. Okay, and as-sakha, which means liberality in giving. So it's like similar to generosity, but to get into the exact difference between each of these, it will be too much. So you can think of this as liberality in giving, or munificence. Okay. As-safhi, which means kind of pardoning. Right, which is, when you say as-safha, right, it's like you're turning a page. Yeah, turning a page. So, someone did something wrong to you and you just kind of turn the page and, it's okay, forget about it. Don't worry about it. وَلِعِظَمِ. So this would mean, greatness. وَالنَّزْهِ. Okay, here this means like, let's say, purity. Purity, or purity of character. Okay. Let's say refinement. Okay. وَكَوْنِ الشَّيْءِ مَرْضِيًّا مَحْمُودًا, and a thing being, pleasing and praiseworthy or praised. وَكَوْنِهِ حَسَنًا أو مَصُونًا. So, this being like beautiful and good. Okay, this being, I guess I should have written this, but being pleasing, meaning satisfying. Praised. Okay. And masunan means basically protected. Maybe you could also say like inviolable. Inviolable. Okay. أو غير لئيم. Okay, not base or mean. So la'im would be to be base, meaning low. Not like the way people say base nowadays, but like in the original meanings, it would be low or, ignoble. Okay. So what he's saying is all of these concepts, right? الجود, العطاء, السخاء, الصفح, العظم, النزه, كون الشيء مرضيا محمودا, كونه حسنا أو مصونا أو غير لئيم. All of these are concepts related to al-karama. So it's encompassing such a huge semantic field, such a huge semantic range. All of these things are included in there. He's saying that these concepts, فَمِنْ آثَارِ الْكَرَامَةِ, they're from the effects of al-karama. Okay, they're from the downstream effects. They're not the actual concept of karama itself, but rather someone who is kareem will have all of these other things as downstream effects, meaning somebody who's noble or has, superiority of the thing in itself, right, is going to have all these other, concepts associated with it, depending on what we're talking about. Okay, but obviously in the case of a human being, these are all the other things that we're thinking of when we think of a superior human being. We don't just mean Genghis Khan, who is socially superior because he has the largest empire. We mean these other things that, he has generosity and pardoning and these other things. Okay, he's beautiful, he's good, praiseworthy. These are all things that sort of make a human being superior in and of itself, regardless of the idea of being superior to other people or in the sense of social hierarchical superiority. Material, in that material kind of sense, not in a spiritual sense. In a spiritual sense, of course, so one person can be superior to another in that, you find him to be of a greater quality, Okay. So he says, فَمِنْ آثَارِ الْكَرَامَةِ وَمِنْ لَوَازِمِهِ. And it's from the effects of karama and from the things that necessarily accompany it or necessarily follow from it. It's necessary concomitants, as we might say. Lawazim could be necessary concomitants or concomitants. Things that stick to it, or things that stick to it slash hold. Maybe hold is the other things that it, hold to it. Maybe instead of hold we say hold to it. Okay, things that hold to it. Okay, they're always with it. That's the basic idea of lawazim. Okay, so let's just clear the board here so we have more room to write. He says, Amma sharafa. So, when we say someone is sharif, that's also another word that's similar to karama, like the nobility. Right? Sharif is similar to al-karim. So what's the difference between them? He's going to explain that now. فأكثر استعماله في علو وامتياز مادي. So he says that usually a sharafa or a sharif is used for, height or being one thing being higher than another in a material sense or in order to differentiate two material things. Okay. وعلى هذا لا يقال إن الله تعالى شريف. So on that basis, it is not said that Allah is sharif. You say Allah is kareem, but you don't say he's sharif. Now, as a caveat, of course, sharif is also used in terms of non-material, but it seems that its use in terms of non-material is like a secondary meaning that's derived from the material, meaning it's being used in a non-literal way, but the literal meaning is material, and then it gets used in a non-literal sense. Okay, whereas he's saying al-karama in itself is not, in its sort of original, is not material. Does that make sense? So both may be used, let's say, for material and non-material things, but the difference is the basis of this one, the asl of it is material, right? Whereas for al-karama, the basis of it is more of the ma'nawiyat, those conceptual and spiritual, you might say, things. Okay, and then he's going to explain his basis for thinking of this. وَيَدُلُّ عَلَى الْأَصْلِ قَوْلُهُ تَعَالَى وَمَنْ يُهِنِ اللَّهُ فَمَا لَهُ مِنْ مُكْرِمٍ. Okay, that whosoever Allah makes light of, or does ihana of, he basically makes light of him, puts him down, or makes disrespected, you can say, then there is no one who is going to make him noble, okay, or give him that nobility or superiority in itself, right? Once again, this isn't in a social hierarchy kind of way. It's more like the quality of a person. Okay. فَجَعَلَ الْإِهَانَةَ فِي قِبَالِ الْإِكْرَامِ. So he, meaning Allah, made al-ihana, this idea of, disrespecting or making light of, as the opposite or in opposition to al-ikram, making something noble. Okay. بحيث لا يجتمعان في مورد, such that they do not come together in the same place. Okay. فالمعنى الكلي الجامع في هذه الموارد واحد. Okay. That the overall meaning, the universal kind of the meaning that encompasses everything, okay, in all of these usages is one. Okay, المعنى واحد. That's مبتدأ, that's خبر. Okay. وهو عزة في ذات الشيء من دون استعلاء بالنسبة إلى الغير. And he's saying that this universal meaning is al-izza, okay, in the thing in itself without regard to being superior relative to another person in a social hierarchy. Okay, which we already covered. Okay, so al-mutannabi in this first bait uses this madda, or this root for two words, right? He says وَتَأْتِي عَلَى قَدْرِ الْكِرَامِ الْمَكَارِمُ. Okay, so al-kiram we're going to cover in a second later on. For now, I just want to focus on al-makarim. So al-makarim is the jam' of makrama, or makruma. Okay, which both mean a similar thing or the same thing. Means a noble deed or action, or a noble trait. Okay, now to be precise, okay, makrama is on the wazn of maf'alatun, which is a ta added to right. Now maf'al is called in the books of sarf ismu makan or ismu zaman. It can mean either the basically an ism that refers to a place or refers to a time. I prefer the name. I haven't seen anyone use this, but it should be really called ismu dharf. And the reason why is because the dharf encompasses both time and place, and depending on the usage, it can be either time or place. Okay, so to give you some examples of this, the clearest example is, for example, okay, طبخ means he cooked, right? And the matbakh or matbakhun equals a place of cooking, i.e. the kitchen. Why is it called matbakh? Because it's the place where a tabkh happens. Does that make sense? So if you understand this idea, and then sometimes it's also used for time. Okay, so this is an example of isim makan. Isim zaman, you can say, for example, you can say طلعت الشمس, right? طلعت الشمس, and then you have from that مطلع الشمس. Okay, which means the time that the طلعت الشمس means the sun basically appeared. Okay, it came up and appeared. And so مطلع الشمس would be the time when the sun comes up and appears. Okay, now let's just clear the board and now let's apply this once again to, let's say, makram. This would literally mean the time or place where karam, or that idea of nobility in itself, happens. Okay. Now, I'm not saying this is an actual word. I don't know if it's an actual word. I have to look in the dictionary to see if this is an actual word. Okay. But what I'm saying is this is what would, well, what did I, yeah, no, this is right. That's the lot. Okay. But what I'm saying is that from qiyas, from the other usages of, this is like theoretically what it would mean. Okay. Theoretically. Whether it was actually used or not, that's a different issue. But what I'm saying is that's what the actual wazn would, or the measure of maf'al would indicate. Okay. But I'm not saying this was an actual usage. I have to look it up. Okay, I actually don't think this was an actual usage. But the point is that from here we can understand that if we add the ta, okay, so plus ta, so we get makrama. Okay, makramatun. Here, this ta, one of the meanings of the ta would be ta al-wahda nahu tamr, tamrun, tamratun. What is the difference between these? Tamr means any amount. It's the ism jins. It's called ism jins jam'i. It basically means any amount of dates, whether it's one, whether it's a whole batch, whether if you have like a whole batch, whether it would be like some of it. Okay, this can refer to any of the above. Okay, whereas tamra refers specifically to one. Okay, it's specifying that there's only one. Okay, so this would be something like an instance, a singular, let's just say a singular instance of a time or place that, you know, basically an action or trait that is noble in itself manifests. Okay? So that's basically what this means. Hopefully you guys followed that chain of logic. Maybe the weak part in the chain here is if you don't understand the connection between tamr and tamratun, basically what's called ismu jins and jam'i, versus, you know, basically when you have ta'ul wahda delineating a single instance of that greater thing. I may, if that's not clear to you, let me know. Inshallah, maybe I'll make like a supplemental video to explain this concept. Although I think I did explain it in the children's book that I was reading. So maybe you can go there. I think I explained it in greater detail over there. Inshallah, that can be something I can maybe reference in the description later on when I look into it, inshallah. Okay, the last thing that you should know, just before I close this out, is that sometimes this measure is used as a masdar, and that's where you get the idea of al-masdar al-mimi. So let me just clear this so that I can explain that. Actually, you know what? I may have to erase this manually. Okay, so this wazn, okay, of maf'al is also used, I should just say here, maf'al. Originally, it's used as I said, ismu dharf, which means ism makan or ism zaman, which I like calling it ismu dharf, even though I haven't seen that actually in any of the Nahu books. I think they should call it that. It has from here the meaning of becoming masdarun mimiyun. Okay, masdarun mimiyun. Okay, and what that means is it basically has the same meaning as a masdar. Okay, so an example of that is if I say, for example, sorry about that, I was having trouble with the pen. نجح الرجل في سعيه. سعيه. Or if I say نجح الرجل في مسعاه. Okay, مسعاه. These two will mean the same thing or almost the same thing. Okay, which means that the man was successful in what he strived towards, in his striving. Okay, in his striving. So how is it that we went from ismu dharf to al-masdar al-mimi? It's because of the idea that the time or place in which this as-sa'i manifests indicates the masdar itself, indicates as-sa'i. In other words, you can't have a mas'a, a place where as-sa'i or striving occurs, without striving occurring. Does that make sense? You can't have, matla'u shams, the time or place in which the shams is coming out and appearing, without tulu'i shams, without the sun appearing. So therefore, the time or place in which something happens indicates that the thing is happening. And so therefore, the dharf, the circumstances in which the thing happens, is indicating that the masdar is occurring. So you get that. Then this therefore being used in place of the regular, or sorry, you get this then being used in place of the normal masdar, as occurs right here. Mas'ahu means the same thing as sa'ihi. Okay, and there's many other examples I can give of something similar. Maybe just one more example so it sticks in your mind. You can say something like al-adlu talabun nas. Okay, so justice is the request or what people want. Okay, and you can also say al-adlu matlabun nas. Okay, say it with a similar meaning. Okay, that justice is what people are seeking. Okay, with here al-adl, the idea being al-adl is in this dharf. This is, of course, all conceptual, right? But this would be, the idea is in a dharf, is in a place, a time or place that is talabun nas. Okay, it's contained in this place where people's seeking is occurring. Does that make sense? That's basically the idea, and so therefore it is the idea being that therefore it is the what people are seeking. Okay, so let me clear the board again so that I can then explain how we go from this idea of maf'al to maf'ala. But that part is going to be simple. The idea, once again, of the ta is going to be a singular instance, because generally when you're talking about a masdar, you can be talking about a singular instance of a thing contextually. Okay? So the idea is kind of similar to how, a dharb equals hitting, and a darba equals a single instance of hitting, which means a hit, right? A single hit, a single strike, right? So, so therefore, you also get the idea of, for example, في كتابك نفع لي. In your book is a benefit for me. And then you can say also في كتابك منفع لي. في كتابك منفعة لي. Okay, and this is also mentioned as a masdar, meaning with the same meaning of naf' or as I say, a very similar meaning, I should say. The linguist will say it has the same meaning, but I'm of the opinion that actually each one of these has like a very slightly different connotation, but effectively like the second order meaning, if you know what I mean, like the actual idea at the end of the day ends up being the same, if that makes sense. It's just more like I think there's the original meaning is still connoted. That's the way I would put it, but that's a deeper discussion for another time. Now where did we go with all of this? Why did we do all of this? What I was explaining was this idea of makrama being a single instance, okay, of the time or place in which karam or nobility in and of itself occurs, okay, and is therefore a single action or trait that is noble, okay. That's basically the idea. But what I'm trying to do is build within you an understanding of the awzan, of the measures in ilm al-sarf, in Arabic morphology, to understand the connotations of the specific measure that's being used, because this is what's going to build you as someone who understands the language very precisely, and is going to help you later on when you're when in certain areas where you may get confused. What's the difference between this or that? Or you're not understanding something exactly precisely. This is sort of what is going to build you. So inshallah, you guys appreciate it. If not, if this level of analysis is too much, it's too advanced, it's too hard, it's too long, whatever the case is, I can shorten it. Just give me the feedback, but inshallah you guys will find this useful. Some of these words, the reason why I'm doing a deep dive is because these words are going to be manifold in their uses. You're going to see them everywhere, and also they're from Asma'ullah al-Husna, so you want to really have a deep understanding of some of these ideas, some of these concepts. Because, for example, so we just explained what makrama means. And then makarim is the jami' or the plural of makrama. Okay, so this helps you understand now the idea, the hadith, the famous hadith, إنما بعثت لأتمم مكارم الأخلاق, right? That I've only been sent to complete the makarim of akhlaq. But now you have an idea of what makarim means at like a very deep level, inshallah. Okay. So now we will move on to the next something conceptual, and then we're going to come back to al-kiram and al-azaim. Okay, and what exactly those mean. Okay, so now I'm going to go on a little bit of a detour in order to explain precisely the meaning of al-azaim and al-kiram. Okay, and remember, guys, because this is the first poem, there are certain like foundational things that I have to teach. But later on, I won't have to repeat them every single time. So you can think of like the progress as kind of, an exponential curve. At the beginning, it's slow, but then later on, we'll be going through the poems, inshallah, much faster. So without further ado, let me just get into this. So in this, if we read these two sentences, okay, at the post office, the folder's job is to fold the envelopes in thirds, versus the second sentence, put it in the folder in the cabinet. Now, this you probably understand right away. The folder here, for example, you have just that, folder that you put on in the cabinet, right? So this is a thing, okay? A folder is the name of a thing. But normally, when you have ER added in the English language, it makes something ism fa'il. So for example, you have to write, right? And then you have a writer. What is a writer? Someone who writes, right? So, but interestingly enough, here in English, even though it's a folder, you don't actually think of it like folding anything, really. You just think of it as a thing that goes in a cabinet, right? Could have been called anything else for all you care. So you don't really perceive this original meaning of to fold. Okay. Whereas over here, when I say the folder's job is to fold the envelopes, okay, this is either a person or a machine, and its job is to fold. Okay. So here you perceive the original verbal meaning of to fold within the word, whereas within the noun, right? But over here, you don't really perceive that at all. So in Arabic, they would say that this is closer to al-ismiya, basically just the name of a thing. And this is closer to what would be called al-wasfiyya, a description of a thing. Okay, now hang on to this and let's continue, and then I'm going to wrap back around this concept. So if you think of the following words, okay, when you think of a knife, a book, a glove, you don't really think of a verbal meaning at all. These are completely here in this camp, al-ismiya. They're just things, they're called that, okay? You don't really perceive a verbal meaning to these, okay? Even if you do have like verbs that can be made of them. So for example, to knife someone means to stick a knife in them, right? But this verb is actually like derived from the object itself, not the other way around. Do you get what I'm saying? Well, I guess I should put the arrow the other way, right? It's actually, this is directionally how it goes, right? You just made a verb out of the actual object itself, if you get what I'm saying, which is different than, for example, to write and a writer or whatever. So in English, this is very common, okay? But if you think of, for example, a buzzer, okay? A buzzer is a thing, but like, what really is it? It's basically anything that buzzes. You think of it more in terms of its function and what it does and the sound it makes. So it's not like there's not really necessarily like a specific object that comes to mind when you say buzzer. A buzzer, you could just say about anything that buzzes. You think of it on any game show. It could look different. It could, even sound different. But as long as it's buzzing, you would say, oh, that's like a buzzer. Okay. So there's still like this idea of al-ismiya. There's still some objectness to it, right? But it's more of a description of what the thing does. If you think then about a loudspeaker, okay, you still perceive, even though it's a thing, you still perceive that like something about its function, it's amplifying sound. That's what a loudspeaker is. It's what it does. It is what it does, right? You still perceive that in English. Likewise, when I say I have a printer, right? Like a printer attached to your computer. That's like a thing. You can think of it in your mind, what a printer is, what it looks like, but you still perceive that idea of what is a printer? Oh, it's a thing that prints, right? You still perceive that sort of active element to it, right? The verb in it. Right. When it comes to something like an antenna receiver, less so. You think of that more of like a static object, but you still feel like a little bit, okay, like it's receiving something, it's receiving a signal, right? So less than a printer, but you still kind of think, yeah, okay, I still feel that like somewhat. When it comes to a folder, like what we mentioned here about the cabinet, that's almost entirely gone. It's called a folder, it has the ER, but you don't really perceive anything to do with folding when you think of a folder, okay? And then, of course, by the time you get, so basically by the time you're like over here, all you're thinking about is in terms of al-ismiya, right? It's just an object, it's just a thing. You don't really perceive or feel the verbal element to it at all, okay? Now, in Arabic, okay, foreign words typically get imported directly as names. So basically, like you can say like here, okay? So for example, the word, firdaus. Okay, this is originally a Persian word that came into Arabic through Aramaic. Okay, and it's actually the same word in English that we have for paradise, right? Paradise. If you see the fa is the same thing as the p because the Arabs couldn't pronounce the p. So anytime there was a p, it got changed into a fa. So you can see there's a one-to-one correlation there. The R with the ra, the D with the dal, right? And then the S with, the sin. Okay, so it's actually the same word. This is not an original Arabic word. It is a word that became Arabized. Okay, Arabized. Or you can say, kalimatun musta'raba. It's not letting me write a dot here under the bat. There we go. Okay. So that's foreign words. However, the vast majority of the vocabulary are original Arabic words, meaning they're rooted in the Arabic language, or at the very least in the Semitic family. Okay, so maybe it came into Arabic through the Hebrew or the or Aramaic, Syriac. Did I say Aramaic here? I think Aramaic or Syriac. The word firdaus came from either Aramaic or Syriac into Arabic, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that if something is but it's originally a Persian word. So just to be clear, this is a Persian word. Firdaus is a Persian word. So what I was saying is that the majority of vocabulary in Arabic is originally, you can say quote unquote like pure Arabic, or at the very least imported from an actual Semitic sister language. And so therefore it's more easily quote unquote Arabized. Okay. Now, because that's the case, words in general are more strongly related to their verbal meaning than in English. Okay, in English is, as they say, a bastardized language, which means that basically it's a Germanic language at root, but the majority of the vocabulary is actually foreign. It's Latin and French based. You have a bunch of sometimes maybe Gaelic words, Greek words, even Arabic words, like all kinds of things just got mixed in there. And the language has changed like so much that it's, hardly recognizable from its German root, if you get what I'm saying. So it just becomes this hodgepodge. And so for that reason, words, you cease to see the relation between like the names we give to objects and like some kind of original linguistic meaning. Not all the time. So for example, a computer is, a thing that computes. You kind of, you sometimes have that, but even to compute, that's not an original English word. So in general, in English, that relation between like verbal meanings and root words and like things we call objects is very much broken down. But in Arabic, that's very strongly felt. Okay? So you can see here, we have this kind of spectrum of al-wasfiyya, right? And you come down to al-ismiyya, right? So in order to solve a problem, which is that when I'm saying a word and you can feel the verbal meaning in it strongly, how do I basically make it more of just the name of an object versus more of a description? How do I, is there a way I can push something closer towards this pole or closer towards this pole? Okay. And basically the way the ancient Arabs got around this is by using certain awzan or measures, like in ilm al-sarf, the different awzan. They use them for words when they want to put something more in like the name category, al-ismiya, versus if they want it to be more description related, okay, or al-wasfiyya. Okay, and even al-wasfiyya, you have like two kinds of like description. You can even say over here that there's another thing, which is like, al-fi'liyya, more closely related to its verbal meaning, like action happening, right? Al-hadath, right? So this is still going to be a description, okay? Because as long as something is an ism and not a fi'l, you're talking about, a thing or an adjective, a description, right? But the point is, this is more like, you can think of this as like, let's say you say something is red, okay, versus something is reddening. What does reddening mean? It means it makes other things red. So here you feel like there's like an active element, right? More like an active element, that something's still happening, ongoing, something like that. Whereas over here, you think of it more like stable, okay? So these are still both, you can say like descriptions, but so these you can put in one box as like, descriptive. And then on the other pole, you have al-ismiya. But even within this, you have this kind of distance, you can say, from this active kind of element of something, feeling like a verb, like action is happening. Okay, so they use different awzans to place things on this entire spectrum. So either something closer up here, something over here. They have different awzan to navigate that. Okay, and so that's basically what we're going to get into now. Okay, so let me just clear the board here. Okay, so I just wrote this in a way that's maybe a little bit more easy to understand. You have al-wasfiyya al-fi'liyya, meaning some kind of active description. Then you have al-wasfiyya al-thabita, and then you have al-ismiya. Now, something important to note as well is that if a word is from an original Arabic root, you never totally get rid of the sense of the original, like as I say, lamhul asl, the feeling of like the original kind of root meaning of it. Only if a word is foreign do you really have that in Arabic. Otherwise, someone who is linguistically acute will still kind of sometimes sense that like original meaning. Although maybe if something is like used very, very frequently, that goes away. But like what I'm trying to say is that that's present. more so in Arabic than in English. Okay, so it's not that you'd like totally move something into the ismiya category, but it's that you move it closer to that. So hopefully that's like comprehensible, to you. So anyway, so I just wanted to give like an example so that this becomes like clear. So to give an example, imagine I'm working at, some warehouse or something, and I need something to open, some barrels. Okay, I got some barrels in my warehouse. I need to open them. I'm looking for something to help open them with. And let's say I come across a crowbar, and I don't know its name in Arabic, and I'm speaking Arabic, okay? And I grab the thing. It looks like it might work. I go, I try it, I use it, and I'm able to start opening barrels, okay? And then I say, هذا الشيء فاتح البراميل. Okay? This thing is the opener of barrels. What do I mean by that? I mean يفتح البراميل. Okay? So here, the word fatih is basically very close to the verbal meaning. You understand? I'm describing the thing by what it does, like basically by the verbal meaning. I could almost just replace fatih with yaftahu. هذا الشيء يفتح البراميل. You understand that? Like you can just interchangeably change them. Okay? And it gives a very, very similar meaning. Is there a slight difference? Yes, but it gives a very similar meaning. So that's the point. It's closer. It's in this pole. Okay? Of al-wasfiyya al-fi'liya. Okay? Now, what about, for example, Surah Al-Fatiha is often called Fatihatu al-Kitab. Fatihatu al-Kitab. And this became like a stable name for it. Okay? Here, even though it's being called that because it's what you open the book with, it's the first surah of the Quran, right? There's a sense in which it just became like the name of the thing. So it's more like over here. Okay? It's more like a description. It's what it's just what you open the book with. It becomes a stable name sort of for the surah. So you think less in terms of, it's still, the verbal meaning is still there, but you think less in terms of that. Okay? And the reason for that is because ta'ut ta'nith can sometimes be just the same as fatih, but for something that's feminine. So for example, if I say, instead of هذا شيء فاتح, if I say هذه الآلة فاتحة البراميل. Okay, here I have the exact same meaning. The ta is just للتأنيث. But sometimes a ta is added in order to move something towards al-ismiya, move something down the pole. Okay, and that's what's happening here, because Fatiha can mean equals any kind of opening chapter of a book or preamble. You can even use this in other than the Quran. You just say Fatiha, it means the preamble, the beginning part. Okay, what the author began with. Okay, so it moves closer in this direction, you can say. Now, if I use the wazn of ismul ala, right? Mif'al. That's one of the awzan of ismul ala, right? And I say miftah. Okay, this becomes a key, right? Which is now closer here to al-ismiya. Okay? So when someone says miftah, yes, that original verbal meaning, because the root of fataha is still there, you can still, as they say, lamhul asl, you can still, sense that original meaning. But in practical everyday life, people just, when you say miftah, their mind immediately goes to a specific object, a key. Okay? And so this is very close to what you might say of al-ismiya, similar to a folder, how we said before. Okay? Where it's just like an object of a thing. Of course, a folder is a bit different because even here you don't really feel anything to do with folding at all. Okay? But over here you still do, a key is what? It's a tool that opens. Okay, because it's on wazn of ismul ala, so it's a tool that opens. That's why it's on this wazn. Okay, because the wazn means that it's a tool, and fataha means that it opens. Okay, so putting those together, a tool that opens is equal to a key. So in English, a key is not related to the verb to open at all. So it's like, just kind of, there's no relation between the two. But in Arabic, that relation is still there. Okay, but when you use this wazn, it's pushing it more in this direction. Do you understand what's going on? So the different awzan can basically move you different places in the spectrum. And by the way, the opposite can also happen. You can also kind of move this way. Although normally you think of things in terms of their verbal meaning as at the root. But the point is that different awzan, they can place you on a different place in the spectrum over here. Is this like a mathematical rule? No, it's like a rule of thumb. Okay, it's like a rule of thumb. You can think of it like that. So I'm just going to give, you can say maybe another kind of quick example or whatever of it. And inshallah the mas'ala will become clear, and then we can move on to explain al-azm and other things that we need to get to. So if I say sajada zaydun yasjudu sujudan, then what it means is basically this.
Allah, Allah.
Right, so to prostrate in the manner that I just showed, and therefore derivative meaning is to become lowly, humble, submissive, right? Now, I can also add here, sajada zaydun yasjudu sujudan, fahuwa sajidun, right? So he is a prostrator, okay? Now, I can have a jam', which the jam' mudhakkar salim. If I say, for example, here, let's get our thing back where we said our little chart. Okay, so if I say rijalun sajiduna, okay, this is going to be closer to this pole. If I say rijalun sujjadun, this is going to be like up here, plus, so yadullu, so fu'al يدل على وزن فعل يدل على كثرة القيام بالفعل plus الحدث. So you feel it's closer up here, plus it gives this additional meaning that these guys are doing sujood a lot, plus الحركة الظاهرة. Okay, so this fu'al is giving dalala on three things: that this is happening a lot, right? Whatever the madda is over here, it's, in this case, it's prostration, right? Sujood. That's happening a lot. That there's like this kind of idea of tajaddud, or the active element. It's happening, so that puts it closer up here. Plus, it tells you about the outward appearance of the thing. Okay, if I say rijalun sujudun. Now, if you notice, this is the same wazn as the masdar. So what does this tell you? يدل على حقيقة السجود. Okay, على حقيقة السجود. Okay, يدل على حقيقة السجود. So what does that mean? It means that it comes closer not just to the outward appearance of sujud, but this over here, what I mentioned before. That inwardly they are humble and so on. So this becomes closer to, like here. I'm not going to say it's thabita, because thabita means that they're always like that. Normally you'd use like the wazn of fa'il for something like that. Okay, that's for a sifa thabita. But the point is it's moving it closer in this direction. Okay. It's not so much about like the fact that they're actively and always doing it, and you're feeling this idea of like, you know, bombastic, it's happening and there's, you know, in front of you and the outward, and you know there's action going on. It's more about the reality of an inward and outward, and so it's more like closer to what we get here. Okay, so hopefully that's you know, understandable. Now let me clear the board, and then I will give you something that's going to be closer over here from the same madda. So if I say, well, نخلة ساجدة, this is what it means. Okay, so here's a regular palm tree, and what happens is when a palm tree has an abundance of dates, okay, so it's full of fruit, then it bends downward. You can see here that it kind of comes down. Okay, and so the Arabs would say nakhlatun sajida. Okay, so this is what it's referring to. Now, something else that's I just found interesting that the Arabs would say is as-safinatu tasjudu lirrih. Okay, lirrih, and this is basically what you're going to see here. So you can see here the boat tips sideways because of how strong the wind is. So this is how the Arabs would describe it. Safinatu tasjudu lirrih. Anyway, coming back to a nakhla or a shajara. So in order to do the jama', right? What the Arabs would sometimes say is nakhlun sawajidu. Sawajidu, because this is mamnu' min as-sarf. Okay, nakhlun sawajidu, or shajarun sawajidu. Okay, describing that picture that I showed earlier. So this is closer to, you might say, like al-wasfiyya al-thabita. Okay, something closer like that. You still feel that action component, like they're actively, you know, doing sujood, but you know, it's something that's there for like a long time, so you feel like it's closer to this kind of pull. As for something that's closer to, you might say, like al-ismiya, would be an example of that, would be, for example, if you just say, you know, nazala zaydun fil makani fahuwa nazilun. Okay, what does this mean? Nazala fil makan. It means that he was traveling and then he came basically and you know, stopped at the place and dismounted. Okay, dismounted from his horse or whatever, and then he possibly also means that he then therefore stayed for a long a period of time, or permanently in a particular place. Okay, so the idea is it's descending and then you're staying there for a period of time. Could be short, could be long. Okay, so here the meaning of nazil means right now he's basically you know, has descended you know, to this place, or he's actively staying in the place. Okay, meaning he wasn't there before and now he's there, and you know, it's the beginning of when he stayed there. So it could, you know, let's say he's traveling, here is the end of his travel, so now he may stay for a short time, he may stay for a long time, right? We don't know how long. The point is, you can describe him as nazil either at the beginning here or, you know, throughout this entire period. Okay, now, so this has the closer to this verbal meaning. Okay, he's actively doing it. Okay, whereas if I say say something like atat al-qawma nazilatun min al-nawazil. Okay. What does this mean? There came to the people, okay, a calamity. Okay, what is a nazila? It means a severe calamity or affliction that befalls men. Okay, let me just write that up here. A calamity or affliction that befalls men. Okay, or people. Now, befalls here. Sorry for this is like not even legible. Hang on. Befalls. Okay, sometimes with the pen, it just, it messes things up. Plus, my writing isn't that neat to begin with. But anyway, so you can still feel the original meaning of to descend here from nazala, right? That's present in here. Okay, but this is a thing. It's describing a thing. Why? As we said before, the ta here can push you down towards closer towards al-ismiya. So a nazila here is closer to al-ismiya. It's like basically the name of a thing. And this wazn al-fawa'il, right, is often used for غير العاقل. One sec. غير العاقل. Okay. And it usually pushes closer towards al-ismiya. Okay, or al-wasfiyya thabita, as we mentioned. So this is basically how now you understand that this has gone from the verbal meaning, although like once again you still have lamh al-asl, you still feel that idea of befalling, right, from the original meaning of nazala, but now it's become a calamity. Okay, you've named it as a thing, a calamity that befalls men. Okay, and so that's what this is referring to. That's what the ta added here, and that's why it's the jami' is on fawa'il, in order to preserve this meaning of al-ismiya, okay, or closer towards that pole. If all that's understood, we can move on. Okay, so keep what I said right now in the back of your mind, and we're going to bring it back in the forward in a second, but right now we're just going to cover the basic meaning of azama first. So if I say, for example, azama زيد على فعل كذا, or let's say فعل الشيء. Okay. يعزم. عزم يعزم. And here we have a bunch of different masadir. The basic one is just azman. Oh, was I muted that whole time? Okay, whatever. So عزم زيد على فعل الشيء يعزم, that's the مضارع, it's with a kasra. And then you have عزما, عزما, عزمة, عزمة. You have عزمانا. And you have a couple of other ones, but you don't have to remember all of the masadir anyway. By the way, you don't have to memorize all of these masadir anyway. I just sometimes just list them just so you get exposure to them. But usually the only one that you'll see used is probably this one, azman, okay? Or al-azm, right, in general. And what it means is that Zayd resolved to do the thing. Okay, so it means to resolve. Okay, al-azm is resolve. Okay, now, so what about al-azaim? Okay, al-azaimu is the jam'u hazimatin. Okay. Now, this is on the wazn of fa'ila. Fa'ila. Okay, which is equal to fa'il plus the ta. Okay, what does fa'il mean? فعيل means ثبوت الصفة. It means that you have a descriptor that is true of the thing being described for a long period of time. Okay, and it can come بمعنى فاعل نحو خطيب. Okay, what is a khatib? It means someone who gives a khutbahs a lot. Okay, so obviously the fa'il, ism fa'il here would be khatib, which means someone who's then speaking, and someone who does that all the time is a khatib. So it becomes a sifa thabita. It means this is true of him in general. This is something that is always with him. It's not that he can sometimes speak or whatever. It's that he is now a speaker. Okay, an orator. Okay, and you also have بمعنى مفعول نحو مجروح. What does مجروح mean? أي الذي جرح, the person who's become injured. Okay, sorry, it's not نحو مجروح, نحن جريح. Sorry, جريح. Right, so jarih is basically means someone, if you just say someone's majruh, it could mean that they just got injured with, like, say, like a light flesh wound. Whereas if you say jarih, it means that they're now injured for a long period of time. Does it mean permanent? It could mean permanent. Okay, but not necessarily. Let's say someone breaks a bone and now they're in the hospital for 6 weeks. You can describe them as jarih. Why? Because as far as injuries go, 6 weeks is still a long time for recovery, as opposed to, for example, a small flesh wound. For like a small flesh wound, you could say majruh. Okay, but for something like a bone injury that's going to take now weeks for you, or let's say a permanent disability, you would use jarih. So the point is that fa'il doesn't necessarily mean something is permanent, but it means that something doesn't just like come and then go. Okay, it's not like just some passive thing. It just happened and then it goes away. It's something that's stable for a period of time relative to the thing. Okay, so relative to the thing. It could be permanent, meaning it could go on forever. Like, for example, qatil. Okay, qatil means someone, maqtul, it means someone who is killed. That means from that time that they got killed onward forever, that this doesn't change. Okay, it's permanent. Okay, but there are other things that do change. For example, you might say طفل صغير. This is بمعنى مفعول. This is بمعنى فاعل, right? So طفل صغير, it doesn't mean he's permanently going to be small. He'll grow up, but it's going to take years. So relative to, let's say, the human lifespan, this is something that's going to take a long time. So fa'il basically means that the sifa is going to be there for a long time. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Could be permanent, could be not permanent, but that's depending on the context. That tells you basically what whether it's permanent or not. Okay, not from the actual wazn itself. The wazn itself is just telling you it's there for a long time relative to the thing, to the subject matter. Okay, so with that, let me just clear some things, and then I'll come back to azima. Okay, so we know what fa'il means. What does the ta mean? Okay, the ta can have one of two meanings. Okay, مؤنث فعيل نحو كريم, or we might say like رجل كريم وامرأة كريمة. So here, Karim and Karima mean the exact same thing. It's just that because the mawsuf here is a female, so you're adding the ta lit ta'nith. Okay, so here no additional meaning has been added, but there's a second meaning that can be added. Okay, al-ismiya. So it adds al-ismiya to fa'il. And this results in, I'm going to have to move this here. This results in, okay, ما يؤخذ. I've only seen examples of this if فعيل is بمعنى مفعول, but there may be examples where it's بمعنى فاعل. Okay, ما يؤخذ للفعل. Okay, what's an example of this? نحو ذبيح. So what does ذبيح mean? It means مذبوح, something that has been killed. Okay, or sacrificed, you can say. Not just killed, but sacrificed. Slaughtered, I should say. Slaughtered or sacrificed, okay? Or slaughtered for sacrificed. In general, it actually just means slaughter, okay? So it's something that's been slaughtered. And ذبيحة equal مذبوح. Okay, so a thing that's been slaughtered. And then ذبيحة ما يؤخذ للذبح. Okay, something that's taken for the purpose of being slaughtered, even if it has not yet been slaughtered. Okay, so ذبيح you would normally say about something that's already been slaughtered. But ذبيحة is like, let's say you have a lamb or whatever, and you're going to slaughter this lamb. Okay, so you would call it ذبيحة, even though it's still alive. Does that make sense? Because now it's a thing. You have the thingness of it. So this is what it is now it is something that I'm going to slaughter. It's going to be taken to be slaughtered, even though it has not yet been slaughtered. Whereas ذبيح is describing something that has been slaughtered. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. So let me just clear some things and then I'll bring that back to azima. Okay, so from here, this is where we get ما يؤخذ للعزم. Okay, ما يعزم عليه. Okay, so if I say عزم زيد على فعل كذا, so العزيمة is whatever this thing is. Okay, it's a thing that you've taken to resolve upon, i.e. a resolution. A resolution is something that you resolve to do. Like how you say my New Year's resolution is I'm going to hit the gym, 3 times a week, every week this year. Okay, so that's a resolution. So you've done azm. You've resolved to do the resolution. Okay, so hopefully you understand why it's on the wazn of fa'ila. Okay, because fa'ila is ma yu'khadhu lil fi'l. It's basically what you're taking in order to now do that action upon. Okay, that's how you're describing it. Okay, and of course, this still retains, fa'ila still retains this idea of thubut as-sifa. Okay, it still retains that original meaning of fa'il, meaning that this isn't just something that, you decide one day, okay, this is something I'm going to take to be a sacrifice, and then, you know what I mean? Like, that changes or whatever. It's like, the point is you've moved it into, well, I guess you could, because now it's just a category of names. So either, you could say actually it is a dhabiha or it isn't a dhabiha. But my point is that when you say dhabiha, what you mean by that is something that is going to be taken for slaughter as like a, as something that's not like going to change, basically. Like once it's in that category, then the category itself is things that are definitely going to be taken for slaughter. Does that make sense? Even if you move something out of that category, the point is the category itself is not like flexible in that way. The meaning of it there. So inshallah, that's clear. And now we'll move on to the wazn of azaim, right? Fa'ail. What does fa'ail mean? So here we have a passage from Ma'ani al-Abniya, which is where I'm getting a lot of this information from, by the way, لفاضل السام الرائي. So here he's explaining the difference between fa'ail and fi'al, okay, which is relevant to this first verse. So he says, وَالْفَرْقُ بَيْنَ هَذَا الْجَمْعِ. What he means by that is fa'ail, okay? وَجَمْعُ فَعِيلَةٍ عَلَى فِعَال. So fa'ila can sometimes be, you can do the jam' of it on fa'ail and sometimes on fi'al. So he's now explaining the difference between the two. Okay? أنما جمع على فعائل. So one فعيلة is put on the wazn of فعائل. يراد به الاسمية. What is intended by that is pushing it closer to that pole of al-ismiyya that I mentioned before. لأن هذا الوزن من جموع الأسماء. Because this measure is from the plurals that indicate, nounness, or like I said before, al-ismiyya. It's from جموع الأسماء. This is something that nouns are, pluralized upon. كالصحائف. So the مفرد الصحائف is صحيفة. والقلائد. Okay, and that's the jama' of qilada. So that's not on fa'ila, that's fi'ala, right? And then والنصائح. So that's a jama' of nasiha. So, qilada means a necklace, and nasiha means a piece of advice. Okay? والرسائل. And that's jama' of risala. Okay, so fa'ail is not just a jam' exclusively for fa'ila. You can also have other things that get put on fa'ail, especially fi'ala is a common one that also gets put on fa'ail. Okay, and risala, of course, means a message. Okay, like a piece of mail or whatever. Nowadays they use barid, but back in the day they would say risala, meaning like a message that you send someone, a letter. Okay. فما حول من الصفات إلى الأسماء جمع على فعائل. So whatever has been transferred from the meaning of a description to a noun, okay, gets pluralized upon فعائل. وما أريد به الوصفية جمع على فعال. And whatever you want to put more as an adjective, a descriptor, it becomes pluralized upon fi'al, on the wazn of fi'al. أو جمع جمعا سالما. Or you do the جمع السالم. Okay? So, for example, like for Kareem, you could do Kareemun. Right? And for Karima, you could do Karimat. Like rijalun karimun and nisa'un karimat. Okay. فنقول بنات كبار. So he's giving the example here of fi'al. وصغار, like بنات صغار, right? بنات كبار وصغار. إذا أردت الوصفية. So if you wanted to describe the girls, then you would say كبار or صغار. Okay. فإن أردت الإسمية, if you intend like nounness, قلت الصغائر والكبائر. Okay, وهي اسم لكبائر الذنوب أو صغائرها. Okay, so what he's saying here is when you just say al-kabair or as-saghair, you're no longer describing something. So notice over here, you have a mawsuf or a man'ut, as they say. I'm talking about in Nahu. You would describe this as mawsuf or man'ut, and then you would have this as a sifa or a na'at. Both of these terms are used, right? Na'at or sifa. So you have sifa and mawsuf. Over here, when you just say as-saghar, al-kaba'ir, you no longer have the mawsuf that's mentioned there. Okay? Rather, it's not even, not only is it not mentioned, it just becomes a direct name for dhunubun, right? Dhunubun kibar becomes al-kaba'ir. Sorry about that. Sometimes the pen messes up on me. Okay? So this becomes a direct name for this whole thing. Okay? So it becomes closer to al-ismiya. Okay? And then same thing with as-saghair. Right? ومثلها الكرائم والكرام. فالكرام وصف وأما الكرائم فيراد بها الإسمية. Okay, so what he's saying is al-kiram means something more similar to these. So you can say rijalun karimuna or kiram, and you can say nisa'un karimatun or kiram. Okay, kiram is for both of them. Whereas أما الكرائم فيراد بها الاسمية. So الكرائم basically means, like when you say كرائم المال or كرائم الأموال, it means the part of your property that is like the choice or the most excellent or the most noble. So like, let's say you have a bunch of like horses and cows and whatever. The best of them would be called the karaim of your wealth, right? Al-mal meaning here wealth, not money, right? Karaim al-mali or karaim al-amwal, it means the choice parts of your wealth, of your possessions. Okay, the most valuable and best things that you have. Okay. So to continue, he says, وَنَحْوُهَا الشَّدَائِدُ وَالشِّدَادُ. So الشِّدَاد is a descriptor. When you describe something that's very difficult or, basically severe or, strong, you would say shidad. Like rijalun shidad means men that are like, very strong and they're not easily broken, they're fierce. Okay. Whereas al-shada'id is referring to calamities that are very severe. Okay, so that are very strong and very severe and like they squeeze you, So he says, فَالْشِدَادُ وَصْفٌ وَالشَّدَائِدُ اسْمٌ وَهَكَذَا. Right, he says that so on. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense. So al-azaim is basically, once again, we said azima, the ta there is to push things towards the al-ismiya, and so therefore naturally the jam' is going to be on fa'a'il. Okay, so that's for the first part of the verse when he says, let's actually go to the verse and then I will finish the explanation of this. Okay, so azaim here we just mentioned is on fa'a'il, which is for al-ismiya, whereas al-kiram is for al-ismiya, or rather al-wasfiya, sorry. So kiram is also the jam' of karim. Okay, which, as we mentioned, what karama means. It means for something to be, valuable in and of itself, noble in itself, without regards to social hierarchy, but sort of intrinsically valuable and noble and worthy. Okay, and karim is, of course, ala wazni fa'il. Okay, bima'na fa'il. Okay, which means that. And as we said before, fa'il is li thubut as-sifas, for a quality that is permanent. So as if, this is something that they also say, the linguists say, كأنها خلقة أي أنها ملكة. So it's like something that's like a permanent quality. So when you say someone is kareem, like a man is kareem, it means that he is intrinsically noble all the time, such that ongoingly he displays nobility. Internally and externally in his actions. Okay, so it's something that is for a long time, as if it is like an intrinsic quality. Okay, so you know how some people, they're just naturally born good at something, or it becomes like almost a part of their personality or whatever. So this becomes like that, it becomes like a malaka, something that's like a natural disposition, a natural disposition. It's as if it's a natural disposition within the person. Okay, so that they're intrinsically noble in this way. And this is the opposite of fa'il bima'na fa'il, that's not a natural disposition. So an example of that would be something like, hazina zaydun فصار حزينا. Okay, so he became sad for a long time. Hazina Zaydun. So Zayd became sad, or Zayd was sad, and then he became sad for a long time. Let's say someone has like, a bout of depression or whatever, and it lasts a long time, and they're just sad all the time. So yeah, in like a majazi sense, in a non-literal sense, you're saying it's like he's sad and it's as if it's become like a natural disposition with him. It's like part of him permanently. He's just always sad. But really, you just mean it for like a relatively long time. It's not something that necessarily, stays forever. But you can say like a more non-literal sense, it's as if you're likening him to like someone who's just naturally like that. Okay? And likewise, when you say, for example, khatib, right? You're saying it's like as if it's now a natural disposition that he's just always an orator and good at speaking. Okay, and just always is there and ready to go. Okay, so this is from the meanings of fa'il. And just to be clear, fa'il doesn't mean something is always a natural disposition. Rather, it can be something that, is acquired, whatever. The main dalala, as I said, is just something that stays for a long time. And obviously, if something is a natural disposition or a natural part of what you are, then will stay for a long time. So, for example, elephants are big for a long time. Why? Because that's naturally how they are. Right? Unless something goes wrong in their development or whatever, they're generally going to be like that. Right? So fa'il is picking out the fact that the quality stays for a long time. As for why it stays for a long time, that can depend. Something could be acquired, but then it becomes like such an intrinsic part of you that it just sticks forever. So inshallah, that's clear, the difference between what fa'il is picking out and then like the different shades of meaning that can result from that. Okay. Whereas I want you to understand the core. And as for the stuff that results from that, those are like, as they say, lawazim, or things that kind of follow. Or could possibly follow, let's say. Okay, now I'm going to clear the board. There's just a few more things I'm going to explain, and then we're going to do the i'rab of the ayah, not the ayah, of the bayt, inshallah.